Methodology means a lot to me. The journey is what it's about. In other words, exploring things on more than one axis. And this is the reason that I keep talking about being multi-axial, because in being multi-axial, one has the advantages, yes, of different vantage points. If we were to look at, let's say, the people who framed the Constitution, the people who put together this country, it's a civil experiment. In doing so, they put together a balance of power. This is so typical when you're multi-axial. You don't want to look at things through just one lens. You have to look past the surface structure, look into the deep structure, and try to tease out what's there. I respect people of faith not because they understand their faith. I respect people of faith because they are willing to admit that it's in a sense messy. It's like when you're talking to a person of faith, they sound as if they're not articulate, and that's the beauty of it. The writer of Hebrews seems to be saying that faith is the substance hoped for. In other words, what do you do before you have evidence? And it's almost as if these writers are trying to say that before you have anything to work with, give yourself permission to explore.
I teach a lot of different types of systematic theology. I've written books on love, postmodernism, Wesleyan thought, open and relational theology. I have a lot of different interests. And today's lecture basically comes from some work I've been doing in the last, year and a half or so. I've been thinking a lot about what it means for God to be expressed kenotic love, especially in relation to what it means for God's power and the problem of evil. And about a year and a half ago or so, I got a grant to explore the questions of randomness and providence. As most of you know, the idea of God's providence is that God is active in the world, perhaps directing it in a particular way, a particular future. For some theological traditions, God's not only got it all figured out where it's going, God's doing all the work, and we just think we're free. In reality, we're not, because God controls everything. I wanted to ask, what does providence look like in an open and relational perspective? Now, open and relational, as I use the term, is a very broad umbrella under which process theology would be one important strand. So open and relational, as I think about it, is much broader. And then, of course, the big question, not only in terms of evil and providence, is can you really believe that the world is full of random events? Is it really true that what happens at the quantum level when we have randomness there, or at the biological level when we have random mutations, or randomness when someone wins the lottery and all the rest of us lose? Is that really randomness, even to God? We all want to make sense out of life. We ask big questions and we want believable answers. Those of us who believe in God wonder, why doesn't God prevent pointless pain, unnecessary suffering, genuine evil? If God is so loving and so powerful, why is there so much needless heartache in the world? Recent surveys show that 1 out of every 5 American women or girls will be sexually abused. Around the world, there are some countries in which half of women and girls are the victims of sexual abuse. My friend Carla works with those kinds of victims. If God cares so much about us, why doesn't God stop sexual abuse? My friend Andy and his family have gone through some difficult times. A friend took the family money and disappeared. They're in financial ruin. Why doesn't God help those of us who go through financial difficulty? Doesn't God care about the poor? Michael is a victim of racism. Because of the color of his skin, people treat him wrongly. He's alienated. Doesn't God care about racism? Or is God only about maintaining the status quo? Debbie has gone through several miscarriages. It's been painful for her, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And yet people have said that somehow her miscarriages were a part of God's blueprint for her life. Really? And then there's Valerie. Her father and my friend suffered from depression. And not long ago, he shot himself. Was suicide somehow a part of God's master plan for his life? Why can't God stop suicide, end depression, heal the kind of illnesses that are so difficult for so many? You, me, our family, our friends, we all deal with needless suffering. A lot of awful experiences don't make the world a better place. And when you ask people why this is, some people say, well, it's just a mystery. God's ways are not our ways, they say. I don't find that to be a satisfying answer. Other people say, well, I just know God's in control. But is this the kind of world you would expect of a God who is allegedly in control? I don't think so. Besides, being in control means that at least sometimes you have to be controlling. And are controlling parents, controlling bosses, controlling boyfriends really our best examples of what love looks like? I don't think so. Maybe it's time we start taking seriously not only the central biblical idea that God is love, but the possibility that God's love is inherently uncontrolling. And maybe if God is always uncontrolling, we can start to make sense of good and evil, chance, purpose, what God is doing in the world, and how we ought to live our lives well. Maybe we should start to believe in and cooperate with the uncontrolling love of God.